It's me, Egbert once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
Then, as of this moment, double secret probation.
See, John, now we're on double secret probation. You have John.
No, that's my favorite.
By the way, you've thrown this line many times, the Animal House line of 0.0. I actually heard that clip where and explain to people what 0.0 is talking about.
Well, the gentlemen from the ragtag fraternity are in Dean Wormer's office at Animal House. And or in the movie Animal House, and Dean Wormer is going through their grade point averages, and they're increasingly getting worse until he gets to John Belushi's character, Bluto, and then Brad, he reads his grade point average, and he's astounded because he says
0.0.
0.0.
I think I told the story on the air that there was one of these YouTube shorts of this guy who was a big fan of Animal House, and he gets onto a plane, and what's the actor's name? Dean Wormer?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what his name is.
And he sees him in the plane. He goes, Dean Wormer, and whoever the actor is, he says, I've had other roles, which is one.
Yeah, but nothing can top that.
Right. It's one of those things. It's the ultimate. Sometimes it's the ultimate. Negative and positive thing to be typecast. I mean, if you want to see one of my all-time favorite movies, and I will say this to John, because every time I tell John there's a movie he needs to watch, and John digs in his heels, I'm never going to watch that movie. The movie that is a really funny, tongue-in-cheek play on Star Trek is Galaxy Quest. Have you ever seen this movie before?
Absolutely not.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's Tim the Tool Man, and the whole precept of the movie is this is essentially it's like, if you can imagine, it's Star Trek. They're lampooning Star Trek, and it's all the members of the cast 20 years after Star Trek has been on TV.
That sounds like a good premise.
And it's really funny. And because of the fact that they go to these conventions, and oh my God, it's Captain so-and-so. And the one thing that Tim the Tool Man always says, and it's funny, I used to run it on Westplex, just like a little drop, never give up, never surrender. Now, I take that seriously because that is one of the things that I believe in. Never give up, never surrender. Most people, if you read the classic book, Think and Grow Rich, and once again, there was a time when if I went into a very successful person's office, and I've done this on many occasions, and even to this day, I can still do it with some people, and I'm in their office, and they're making buku bucks, and I say to them, have you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich? They will point to it on their bookshelf, or they'll open up a drawer and pull the book out and show me, yeah, here's right here. Matter of fact, I recently bought a copy of this at a bookstore for a friend of mine who refused to read the book, and I thought, I'm just going to buy the book and give it to him. And I bought it down at, I can't get confused. It's terrible. I mean, as a person in the media, a person who does marketing.
Oh, I know. You went to Library Limited there in Clayton.
No, I went to that's gone. That's Centene now.
No way. Get out of here.
It's gone. That's been bulldozed 20 years ago. I went to, what's the place right there at 170 Ladue? At Barnes & Noble. You know what I'm talking about? Right there.
Yeah, the good corporate bookstore. Now, Brad, that is definitely with your mom and pop ethos, but go ahead.
Find me a local bookstore. I mean, they don't exist anymore. I mean, where can I find a local bookstore? Tell me, John.
I would say that if you're fond of Goodwill, Brad, I mean, you're on here once a month pumping the Salvation Army off their Harvester Road. They have a wide book selection.
Yeah, but once again, you're taking the risk. See, once again, Like John says, my time is valuable. Don't call me because my time's valuable. My time's valuable. I don't have time to go to a resell it shop to, well, maybe this place will have the instruction manual for a 1942 Studebaker. It might be on the shelf at Goodwill. No, the chances of that are slim and non-existent, okay?
I know. And can you imagine that cut into your time sitting on your ass watching who's the clitoral guy? Cletus Johnson or whatever his name is. Gosh, could you imagine if you couldn't watch so much Cletus stuff?
Cletus McFarland. Okay. Anyway, so I buy the book, and the young lady who checks me out has an accent, which I believe was some type of Norway, Sweden type of accent.
Ooh, I like it, Brad.
And she starts asking me about the book. And I say to her, I said, well, this is a book that I've bought probably literally 40 years ago that to a certain extent has changed my life, and it's to change the life of quite a few people. And she's like, what's it about? And I go, what's it's about? And I said to her, I said, you might find it somewhat offensive because there are no women mentioned in this book. And there aren't, because at the time, the book was written, 1938 or something like that. And, all the people in business were dudes. Let's be honest. There weren't like this women CEO. Right now you have a woman CEO of General Motors. And that it's just a totally different environment. I talk about the fact that in my swing of being in the radio industry, when I first got into the business too many years ago, everybody on the air was a man. Everybody in management was a man. All the salespeople were men. The only women that worked at the radio station were like back office secretaries, things like that. Then, 10 years into my career in the radio business, a lady by the name of Karen Carroll became my boss, and I loved every minute of it. I learned so much from her. But you got people like J.C. Corcoran who hated her because of the fact that she was a woman and made fun of her on the air all the time.
Oh, my goodness. How horrible is that? You want to get back to your original point, Brett?
I don't know what it was. Well,
you were talking about the woman asked you about the book.
Think and Grow Rich.
And you told her that there wouldn't be a lot of women in there.
Well, and she asked me, this is going to be sort of weird because she asks me about, and she says, she's like asking me all these questions. And she asked me about like this. I go, look, here's the table of contents. Here's the things they talk about. And there's one chapter in the book, which is, and I'll be honest with you, mystified me for probably 5 years. And I can tell you the chapter of the book, and it's funny because I've had discussions with other people like this. It's called The Mystery of Sex Transmutation. Now, when I mention sex and transmutation, sex, John's ears perk up. Transmutation, his ears go down.
This is a great, I think everybody's familiar with this, but I shouldn't assume things. But transmutation is I don't know if there's any scientific theory behind it, but it's quite a popular meme of people who want to believe this stuff. Go ahead and explain it, Brad.
Well, essentially,
I'm familiar with the theory. What
you do is you transmute one thought or action into another. So in other words, you're sort of like saying, and I give my best example. Bill Clinton used to say this all the time. And Bill Clinton was complimented because he could focus like a laser beam, okay? And there were people that talked about that there could be people throwing hand grenades at Bill Clinton on the left, and there were people taking shots at him with the Uzi on the right, and Bill Clinton could be sitting in the middle there, and he could be concentrating on something and totally oblivious to what's going on around him. You know what I'm saying? One of those kind of people.
Oh, yeah.
And essentially that was the whole part of it. Anyway, I don't know why I got into this, but I said to her, look, it's an interesting book. You might find it somewhat offensive because once again, now everybody in the book's dead. Everybody in there is dead. It's got Henry Ford and Thomas Edison and Charles Schwab and all these people. They're all dead. But the interesting part of it is that it gives precepts. And one of the articles in the book is, I'll never forget, it's called 3 Feet to Gold. And it talks about the fact that most people give up when they're really close to success. When they're real close to success. Matter of fact, I heard a guy give an inspirational talk over the weekend, a guy who was Bear Bryant. Was he the Alabama coach? Who was he at?
He was, yeah.
Okay.
Alabama.
A guy who went to essentially was some kind of a camp, a tryout camp for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and Bear Bryant was the coach. And he just worked them to death to the point where literally he said the next morning there were guys packing their car up going like, I'm out of here. This is not for me. And this guy, kept at it. I can't remember his name, but he made the comment that Bear Bryant gave another speech. He says, when most people are ready to give up and you push through that barrier that most people stops them, once you get on the other side, you look back and you think, oh my God, why didn't I do this earlier? Why didn't I do this before? I see everything in focus now. And what bothers me about, and here's Brad's going to put on as what bothers me about the country, is if you give people stuff, if you let the immigrants come in and you give them a hotel room in New York and you give them food and you do this and you do that, guess what? They're not going to work hard. But yet, how many success stories, and once again, I read these business bios all the time. I read one over the weekend of what's-his-face from Virgin Atlantic, Richard, what's his name? I'm getting terrible with names, John. I feel like I'm...
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson. I mean, it chronicled all his failures. Failed at this, and then he starts to have a success, and then he starts to pick up the momentum. How many times do you see these successful people who are first-generation Americans who talk about they came over to this country with $30 in their pocket, and now they're worth $10 million. You know what I mean? Time after time after time. And it's to the point where how come somebody who is here in this country doesn't see that opportunity? Because they're blinded by the fact that people are taking care of them. They're blinded by the fact that they can get free this, free that, free milk, free cheese, whatever it is, free money, blah, blah, blah. But there's a guy that recently, I don't know if you've seen this because I follow a lot of this social media stuff. There's some guy from Venezuela or something like that, some guy who is like super successful on the internet, and he's made a ton of money, and is an illegal immigrant, and he brags about the fact that he makes all this money, he gets all this free stuff from the government. He doesn't have to work, he's got a place to live, and he's flashing $100 bills. This is the money. I went down and cashed my check that I got from the government. Okay, what is that sending to our people? But yet when you look at this, and I guess the thing that bothers me most about this is that it used to be the differentiation between the Republicans and the Democrats. I don't think it's the differentiation anymore.
Well, I think Republicans would have a starkly, or conservatives at least would have, conservatives or libertarians would have a starkly different view of that. Real quick, before we forget, the gentleman from the guy that played football at Alabama, his last name was Gump. And he grew up with leg braces, and he ended up, because he had the leg braces and kids bullied him, he had to run really fast. So he developed a really strong cardiovascular system and really strong legs. And he went on to play at the University of Alabama. I believe they retired his jersey too. And then he knocked up this chick named Jenny. She was really hot, but she was kind of a hippie. And so like most hot women, she made bad decisions with men. Like, she liked strong alpha types, but they were often bad for her. They treated her poorly. Because she had low self-esteem, Forrest was really kind to her. And when you treat a woman with low self-esteem that way, she doesn't believe you. Because if you give her a compliment, it doesn't jibe with her real vision of herself. So anyway, turns out they had a kid together. And Forrest, the great Alabama football player, didn't even know till he went back to visit her, Brad. Somebody should make a movie about this.
John, you want me to shock you?
Yeah.
I've never seen that movie.
Good for you, Brad. That's a Combestian type thing of I've never seen it before.
I've never seen that movie.
It's worth seeing, but it's no Big Short or one of the other. What's the nerd movie you just referenced off that nerd show, the sci-fi movie?
Galaxy Quest.
What was that nerd show that virgins watched all the time with Sir Spockula or whatever his name was?
Okay, we're going to move on. Okay, two last things to finish out the show. It's bad for the Secret Service, but the story comes out yesterday, and I'll read the headline. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Secret Service uniformed officer accidentally shoots himself while on duty. Okay, that's never a good thing when you have... Now, once again, this is not the undercover Secret Service dudes. This is a uniform, because they have the uniform guys as well, too. Okay, so he shoots himself while on duty. Okay, now, last but not least, I talk about government regulations, okay? Here's what's interesting. The title of this is, and I've had 2 or 3 people send me the same article, 5 insane Biden-Harris appliance regulations heading your way. You ready for this, John?
I am, yeah.
Number 1, furnaces. and I know this, effectively producing, it will prohibit new non-condensing gas furnaces by 2028. You have to be a nerd to know the difference between a condensing and a non-condensing gas furnace, but non-condensing gas furnaces, which are the cheaper ones, will be outlawed by 2028. Water heaters, okay? Right now, before the pandemic, an average water heater could cost you about $200-$300. That's if you buy it at Home Depot. Installation be extra. The new price for the water heater, which is going to go in effect with new regulations by 2029, the agency estimated, this is the DOE, saying the new water heater would cost $953. But of course they say, well, once you use it for 10 years, it'll pay you back. Now, once again, you have to use it for 10 years, okay? Central air conditioners. I know this all too well. As of January 1st, 2025, less than 4 months from now, there's a new refrigerant that goes into effect, which is interesting because the refrigerant that most people are using, like now old school R22, current refrigerant R401A, R410A, is non-flammable. The new refrigerants are flammable. Think about that for a minute. That's our government putting flammable refrigerant into our air conditioning system. Number 4, dishwashers. Dishwashers will have to become more energy efficient in 2027, and some people are saying it will double the price of the dishwashers. And number 5, we already got rid of the incandescent light bulbs. Now there is going to be new standards for light emitting diodes, LED bulbs, ones you buy right now, which will essentially take the price. The average LED light bulb will now go from $2.98 to estimated $5.68, and that is essentially in effect in 2028. Thank you, government bureaucrats. Thank you, President Biden and Vice President Harris. You are taking care of us. But you know what? They will say, well, it'll pay itself off in 42 years. Guess what? I'm going to be dead in 42 years, so I won't be able to get the benefits of the energy conservation. Right, John?
Well, first of all, that's very selfish of you. Secondly, you can't put a price on climate change, Brad. And third, it's a gloomy day, and our station's probably going to go off the air because you can't plug into the O'Fallon Renewable Energy Center, which is where you take your extension cord after the show every day to keep the transmitter up.
John, you caught me. Say goodbye, John.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?